Okay, Matt, I appreciate you jumping on here and just sharing your knowledge of Eastern Iowa, Cedar Rapids area. I wanted to have you on just because I have a fair amount of customers, clients, people reach out to me that want to invest in Iowa, and I'm specific to Des Moines. If you try to tell me even to go up to Ames, which is 40 minutes north of Des Moines, like I don't feel comfortable being the agent of knowledge there. And so I certainly am not the agent of knowledge in Cedar Rapids, although Cedar Rapids in Eastern Iowa has been, I mean, it's been mentioned on Bigger Pockets. So when I met you and knowing that you have investment properties and understand the world of being a realtor that talks to and like investors and is an investor, I wanted to have you on and just kind of pick your brain about Cedar Rapids, what it's looking like over there, what the economy is, and all that good stuff. But first, just do kind of a little intro. What do you do? How do you get to the place where you're at? Like I don't know, a couple minute bio.
Sure. Well, first off, thanks for having me on. My name's Matt McCurdy. How I started, I guess, way back when. I'm originally from the Des Moines area. Grimes is my hometown. So naturally came over to Eastern Iowa because of the University of Iowa. Got a job with Rockwell Collins, which is an aviation company, and has now been bought out by Collins, or is now Collins Aerospace, but has been bought out by two huge companies in Raytheon and United Technologies. So there's been a lot of change there. And then I ended up working on a supplier management role in both corporations with Rockwell Collins, and then I eventually went to Whirlpool. So did 10 years in the corporate America game and decided probably a year or two in with Whirlpool, just the anxiety of my 401k being able to go up and down, 10% every day and not being able to know or do anything about it really. So I just started looking at different ways, and my wife and I came into, like everybody does, Robert Kiyosaki and looking at investment properties. So we create a business plan right around July 4th of 2012, and for some stupid reason I took a year and a half to actually buy my first property. So looking back on it, what today prices are and the appreciation we've seen, it's like, man, Matt, you're so dumb, and buy anything and you would have done really well. So, but that's just part of being a new investor, learning this and trying to take your time and not, set yourself up for failure, So, since then I bought my first investment property. It was a single family house and have built it up since then with quite a few more single family properties, duplexes, and I've even purchased some mobile home parks here in the last couple of years. So doing a lot of different things. And then from my perspective, how I connected with you, I'm a real estate broker, got my real estate agency license, whatever you want to call it, back in 2015, primarily just looking for somebody like you and me, and there really wasn't anybody out there in Cedar Rapids, looking for somebody that knew what I was looking at and what I was looking for, not somebody that just represents a first time home buyer, somebody that can really get in and say, okay, boom, 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 here's how much it's going to take to renovate this bathroom, kitchen, foundation, whatever. Right. So that was kind of out of just necessity. I got my real estate license representing myself, and then got my broker's license in 2019, and now the broker of Scotsman Real Estate. That's what the name of my properties are. So Scotsman Properties. I didn't think I needed to reinvent the wheel. So
Nope.
That's kind of my story in a nutshell. I reside in Cedar Rapids. Been here for however many, you do the math, since 2008. So this town has suffered a lot in the time I've been here, between a flood and a derecho and many flood scares in between then and now. So looking forward to talking more about it.
Yeah. So we can get into the scares of the flood. Let's get into like more of the local economics. How is the city like government planning? Do you feel good about it? What's your feeling? Where are they expanding? Is there any quote unquote opportunity zones?
Yep.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
tell me just a once over on that.
Sure. I I actually, coming from Des Moines, and quite frankly, all my family's back that way too. So I'm making it to Des Moines. We have a 3-year-old, so we make it back to Des Moines quite a bit because all the grandparents want to see them. So I see what's going on in Des Moines, and I see what's going on in Cedar Rapids, and I would say the big difference from an economic standpoint is you have manufacturing. You still have some white collar jobs in Cedar Rapids, don't get me wrong. But I would say that the bulk of the industry is manufacturing. And in comparison to Des Moines, there's more white collar jobs, insurance and what have you. But I think they're very similar. I would, call Des Moines kind of the standard. And that's even the city manager, Jeff Pomerantz, he came from West Des Moines. His one of his last signature projects was working with West Des Moines, creating Jordan Creek. So a lot of the things that are going on in Cedar Rapids, you know, Cedar Rapids would never admit it, but they're copycats, right? They're just and to be quite frank, Des Moines is doing a great job, so it's easy to copycat them, right?
Well, in Des Moines copied somewhere else too, right? Like let's start
Yeah,
off.
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
everything
Yeah,
is copied. There's no question.
yep, yep. So why reinvent the wheel and make something harder than it has to be when you have a couple-hour drive and figure it out. So a lot of the economic things are a little bit different and maybe a little more scaled back, just population wise, discretionary income wise. You have a lot of differences there, but overall, we're still, the second largest city in Iowa. There's, roughly 250,000 people still in Cedar Rapids, and even between, if you did the 380, they call it the Eastern Iowa corridor between Waterloo, Cedar Rapids, and those surrounding areas, and then you have Iowa City, Coralville. That there's quite a bit of population there, and Cedar Rapids and Iowa City are close enough that there are some shared resources that I've noticed. So
Yeah, that's one that I was going to touch on. If someone, the market of Cedar Rapids and Iowa City being a huge college town with the University of Iowa, Cedar Rapids having a community college, but not near the capacity or the size. I mean, to me, those are completely different markets. I'm not in them
yeah,
though. How does that look like?
yeah, I would treat them as two separate markets, just like Des Moines and Ames.
Yep.
I
Okay.
think is a good comparison. You don't really they're again, they're Iowa towns. They can't be that crazy. It's not like talking about Des Moines and New
LA.
York City,
Yeah.
yeah, or LA, right? But they are different enough that, for instance, I've helped a couple people, some friends, buy some places down in Iowa City, North Liberty area, and you're paying roughly, $40,000 to $50,000 more for a property. And granted, we were looking at, 3-bed, 2-bath,
These are
2-car garage.
residential
Yeah, these
purchases.
are
Yep.
residential units, and the price tag to get in was 40 to 50,000, between more expensive to buy down in North Liberty, Iowa City, Coralville area versus what it would be up here in Cedar Rapids.
What about
Granted,
the property tax difference? Or what do you guys pay for property? I know Des Moines has notoriously high property tax.
yeah, yeah, and Cedar Rapids is, I wouldn't say they're cheap by any means. And in fact, just like everybody, we're just getting steamrolled with, every time a different house on the block sells, it's a new comp for them to be like, oh yeah, all your houses are worth more. It's getting pretty crazy how quick they're keeping up with these price valuations. But overall, I'd say we're a little bit cheaper than Des Moines, with owning a couple properties in Des Moines metro area. Um, it's few, maybe $200 to $300 on a normal, if you're putting apple to apple from Cedar Rapids to Des Moines, it's maybe $200 or $300 more a year
Okay.
for the Des Moines one. But Cedar Rapids has a few, I'd call them suburbs, with Marion, Hiawatha, Robbins. Marion seems to keep up a little bit higher, but they have Linn-Mar High School, which is pushing a lot of money into that high school. They every year it seems like they're expanding that high school with multi-millions of dollars. So they keep spending that money, and I think that's why.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What about like job prospects, or we kind of talked about the blue collar side of things, and Rockwell Collins or whatever they've been bought out of or bought and by. What kind of, the big employers, is there 4 or 5? Is there 10? What's that look like? Is there one industry that if this industry got hit hard, Cedar Rapids would really, struggle more, or what's that look like?
Sure. And to be quite honest, that's something I have thought about quite a bit because of the portfolio I have. I have a few in Des Moines, but the majority is Cedar Rapids, Marion area. And that's a risk I've flagged for myself, right? If you don't want to buy all of Apple stock, that's not diversification. So, the big things that I'll say this, there's in Cedar Rapids, you come to Cedar Rapids, if you don't know someone directly, you'll meet someone that knows someone that works at Collins Aerospace, right? So they're the behemoth of Cedar Rapids. Everybody's related to somebody that works there. And they have been bought out by United Technologies. I don't remember what year it was. I want to say like 2018 timeframe. And then United Technologies merged with Raytheon, like within a year and a half later. It was very, very quick. So there have been some jobs that have moved to that, because Collins, or it used to be Rockwell Collins, was headquartered in Cedar Rapids. So naturally, some of those jobs, the CEO, controller, maybe some of those jobs have moved out of Cedar Rapids, but by and large, the 99% of those jobs have stayed in Cedar Rapids. The one big kind of scare there was here recently, a few years ago, BAE purchased a large subsection of Rockwell Collins, which was like the military GPS units. And that was something that is being built down in Coralville. They have a huge manufacturing facility down there, 600 to 700 employees down there. And they thought eventually that needed to be sold out. The Federal Trade Commission said, you're between Raytheon's merger and, Rockwell Collins basically owning that market, it's in violation. So Rockwell or Collins Aerospace was forced to sell that off, and they sold it to BAE, which is another huge conglomerate of companies, and they chose to invest in Cedar Rapids. It's the building's actually being built right now down by the airport. So that was a big win because that could have been 600 to 700 jobs going out. Yeah. And then who knows, it could have been a slippery slope where, who knows what is next, but by and large, you still have a few things working, whether you agree with them or not, but compared to the coast, right? Iowa has a lower labor market, a price point, per hour, even though it seems like it's much more expensive now, it's still by and large is lower. The land prices are pretty reasonable. So we still see a little bit of that. You have, switching gears to other companies, you have Quaker Oats, which is PepsiCo. Seems like all of these companies are being bought out and they have 20 different names, but PepsiCo is what I'd call it, is downtown. They're a huge employer. You have Cargill. I think they're the second largest employer behind Rockwell or Collins Aerospace. And basically a lot of ag and food industries. There was Aegon, Transamerica, whatever you want to call them nowadays. That's a more of a financial firm that it's sold a little bit out, and they're kind of going back and forth, with San Francisco. So kind of peculiar to me that they would want to move some of their jobs out of Cedar Rapids, just from a cost perspective, but they've chosen to do that. They still have a presence here in Cedar Rapids, but it's not nearly as big.
Right.
And then you have General Mills, that obviously that I think they make a lot of oatmeal and cereal.
Yeah, kind of like I'm no economist, but it kind of seems like the industries that they aren't going to crash because they're kind of staple industries. You know what I mean? Not crash, but you have food, you have aerospace technologies in general. Like that's just not going away.
Yep.
In some capacity, right?
Yeah. And I mean, having an inside track at knowing how Rockwell operates their business, and then still having friends that work there, I still quiz them on that. They generally try to keep 50% of their business was commercial. So you think of airlines, planes flying around, that's what they'd call commercial. And then 50% was government. And, obviously those two kind of corresponded. Commercial would be up, maybe government spending would be down, or vice versa. So they were looking at that to diversify, to make sure that they weren't in a bad position. Obviously things go up and down, but overall, yeah, Cedar Rapids seems to be pretty stable. You're not going to see an Ankeny, Iowa, where there's just booming there are some growth areas in Cedar Rapids, but they're not touching West Des Moines, Waukee.
I was going to ask the new home builds, the new apartment builds. Is there cranes in the air?
Yeah, there's a few cranes downtown because there are some, just like Des Moines, like I said, they are focusing on developing downtown housing. And but quite frankly, some of that kind of got hurt through the coronavirus, just like I'm sure downtown Des Moines got hit. So because the employers are slowly coming back. So there are spots, mainly Marion, like I touched on. Linmar School District is a thriving area. There is a bypass that's called the Highway 100 project that basically connected Collins Road, and it went all the way on the west side of Cedar Rapids, down and hooked into Highway 30. And from there, all these investors have gobbled up all that farmland you can see off Highway 100, is for sale for like, $200,000 or $300,000 an acre kind of sale. But there already are houses being built out that side. Southwest side of Cedar Rapids, primarily Prairie School District, is a large growing area. If you said, okay, look at all the building permits in Cedar Rapids, I would say the southwest side represents 3/4 of them.
Yeah.
But again, that kind of detracts from what Marion's doing. Marion's kind of its own entity.
Yeah.
So
cool.
A lot of building, but not near the scale of them.
Right.
What?
Well, I mean, the metro, Des Moines Metro, I mean, it's 4 times bigger, right? And it really is 4 times bigger. So is it 1/4 of what it is in Des Moines? It probably is pretty close. I mean, if you think about it in that scale.
Sure.
How about the rental world? So backtrack to people that want to buy an investment property, and maybe they've looked at Des Moines, and Des Moines isn't quite cash flow numbers aren't as what they want to see in cash flow. What can you buy in Cedar Rapids, whether it's on market? What's the off market look like? How much, how much demand is there? Is there a ton of big players, that type of thing?
Sure. Well, this is kind of a hard question to answer because it's, it's kind of like what a lawyer would say. It depends.
Yep.
Uh, you know, the way I would describe Cedar Rapids and what's happened in the last 3 years, we've seen just immense amount of appreciation that Iowa, quite frankly, doesn't normally see a ton of, right? Historically. So I would say, with that caveat, before all this coronavirus and, the government throwing money into it, you could buy a decent little single family house for $100,000 and rent it out and get the over 1% rule or close to it kind of thing. And now it's like the new $100,000 house is 150, right? And everything, and it's happening all over this country, but Cedar Rapids is uh, not immune to that at all. So it depends on what you're looking for, but in cash flow wise, it depends on what you're buying, single family, duplex, multifamily. Uh, if you're looking for 10% to 20% cash on cash return, you can probably get that. It just depends on what you're looking for,
Yep.
when, where. Obviously the higher end, you might be in a neighborhood that's not as uh, uh, you know, I don't even,
Affluent.
yeah, fluent, whatever word you want to, demand for. And then, the lower end, you're going to be in the better neighborhoods, that type
So
of
when you say
thing.
of return, so you're like your 10% cash on cash might be in a lower income neighborhood, right? A lower property valued neighborhood. And then
Well,
vice
yeah,
versa.
I would say the vice versa
Vice versa.
is
Sorry. Yeah, I said that wrong. Yeah.
20% you'd
Yep.
get it
Yep.
lower income, and then 10% maybe you're talking, 150, $175,000 house, and you're getting, good school district, somewhere where, anybody would, you're basically competing with retail investors at that
Yep.
point, right? To secure that house.
What are the rent
Because
rate? I mean, if you bought something like a 3.2 in the Linn-Mar school district, I mean, what's that going to rent for?
Well, 3.2 with you do a single car garage.
Yeah.
double
I mean,
car.
roughly.
But
I mean,
yeah, you're talking 13 to, it depends on the finishes. You can maybe even push up to, I would say, between 12 and 15. Let's say
okay.
that.
Gotcha. Sorry.
But yeah, it just kind of depends on what you're looking for. I have, for instance, I can tell you what I'm renting a house right now. It's a 4-bedroom, 1.5 bath, 2-car garage, and it's on the northeast side of Cedar Rapids. Very close to Linn-Mar, but I think it would technically be Kennedy High School or Kennedy School District, which is still a really good. In fact, I think it's probably the better ones in Cedar Rapids. And I'm asking just shy of 15 for that.
Yeah.
And it rents out pretty easy, but it's got decent finishes, click together LVP,
Yep.
flooring,
Yep.
some decent appliances, taking care of the things that are right.
Yep.
If you're kind of on the lower end, maybe it's not as big. It's this house is probably 1,700 square feet.
Okay.
Maybe if you're looking at the older side of Marion or something, and it's an 1890s house and it's maybe only 900 square feet, you might be closer to the 1,100, 1,200 range. It's really hard to say without saying
seeing the property.
address.
Yep.
Yeah,
I'm just looking. Yeah, just looking for so people understand what the numbers are looking like. How often do you like your duplex, triplex, fourplex come up? I mean, how many are those listed or whatnot?
Well, those are just like Des Moines. They're hard. People have infatuations with anything that has Plex on it, right?
Yep.
So if it has Plex in the name, it's like, oh my gosh, let's look at that. So Duplexes, yeah, I've noticed, and I'm sure it's probably the same. The up down duplexes might not be as valued as the side by side,
Yep.
and the up downs, again, you can get a kind of an older one that's, you know, small, maybe a 2 bedroom, 1 bath, or maybe they're just 1 bedroom, 1 baths, and they're like an old house that's been converted to a duplex. Uh, those can work, and you can get maybe 120 on the low side, all the way up to, however much you want to pay.
Yeah.
And then the side by sides, I would say those are, you're going to be, it's going to be tough to get anything under 150, 160,000 for something like
Okay.
that. And those would be small units. And then obviously that goes up too from the, you know, the rent range. You start talking about what can you get out of it and how the
Yep.
cash flow can work.
Yeah. If someone wanted to come and just like buy 30 properties in Cedar Rapids that really like were what you would call like a pretty good investment, doesn't need to, replace an income, but a solid deal. I mean, is that possible? What's that time frame look like? Time period?
Yeah, it's possible. I know I've talked to a few investors that are like, I don't know if I want to stick around. Quite frankly, they believe the market's kind of at the top, um, and who knows? No one really knows at this point,
Right.
with the crystal ball. But it can be done. It's just a matter of piecing them all together, and making sure you like what they're selling. Just like anything, the investors, if you're an investor, they're gonna want top dollar, and want to try to make something work better for them to get out versus, on your side, if you're
Yeah.
buying it, it's like, man, it's chicken and the egg type thing. How quick you could do something, it's just a matter of where those people are in their mindset of saying, hey, I'm
Yep.
ready to go, and just sell them off. And then the other big thing I've noticed with investors, some are fine inheriting tenants, some are not. So if you're just like, sell it to me, it'll be turnkey, I'll take what you have, send me the leases, applications. So, that can be, a 3 to 6 month thing, from start to finish. Where if you're kicking tenants out because you want them vacant to put in your tenant, or you want to upgrade some things to get a higher rent rate because you're buying on, opportunity, that can be much longer, right?
Yep.
It just kind of depends on where the lease is.
Yep. How about so we only got 5 minutes left just because I'm cheap and I don't pay for the paid subscription, or too much of it. But
Yeah.
question on property management contractors. If someone worked with you and said, hey, Matt, we want to buy 3 properties or whatever in the next 3 months, whether it's property management, contractors, how do you kind of refer that business? What's your kind of play in that as an agent?
Yeah. So in terms of property managers, I actually have done that game in the past in terms of hiring property managers for myself. I've never found it a positive experience, let's just say that. And so I have actually hired a couple people to be my property managers for me. So
In-house.
I have it all in house, and it's more expensive that way, but I know that things are getting done, and the way I want them to be done. So, that can be a conversation. If you said 3 versus 30, that
Yep.
would be a different conversation. 3 might be a little more achievable because one of the property managers is an agent under me, and he could take on the property management side of
Yep.
that, no problem. Contractors, it's insane.
Yeah.
So Cedar Rapids,
Take it with a grain of salt, right?
yeah, well, and Des Moines feeling it too, but Cedar Rapids is even worse, I think, personally. because of the derecho. The nice part is if you buy something, you have a new roof, you probably have, new siding. This whole town's getting a facelift uh, on the exterior because insurance is paying for it all. But with that being said, there has been just a vacuum since 2020 when that derecho hit of contractors just coming in and getting some stuff done, and then some of them have left, and then the locals are still trying to get that going and keep things moving in the right direction. So you have competition between other investors and other actual people that live in their own house, their primary residence. They're like, I just want to get it done, right? So we are coming closer to an end there in the next, I would say 2023 will be a better year probably for that. But prices where I was getting 20, $25 an hour type work is now, 30 to $40 an hour work and on up.
Yep.
So
Nope, that makes sense. Yeah, I'd say we had derecho, but not as nearly as bad as you guys did. So I think we
yeah,
saw it for like a year. I'd say it's pretty much gone now, the aftermath, if you will.
yeah.
Cool. Is there any questions I should have asked about Cedar Rapids or thoughts on any of that?
No, I mean, I think the best thing for anybody interested in Cedar Rapids, investing in Cedar Rapids, even Eastern Iowa, I would say whether you're talking to me or anybody, you need to just go and see it. And that's probably my, lean Six Sigma background is just, you just need to go see the neighborhoods. Google,
They can vary so much, right? They
yeah,
can vary so much.
yeah, yeah. And then the pictures, looking online, you're like, oh yeah, this looks good. And then, was it just lipstick on a pig kind of thing, or was it actually a really nice house, or was it the worst house on the block? You just need to be able to get out there and check it out. So
Yep.
I've done that for other people that are out of town, take them around in a day and just say, here's what's going on. I have actually a couple friends that are in the with kind of the side of the city and with the economic alliance, and you just get some more information than the average person
Yep.
has. You kind of know where the growth areas are going to be and what the plan is, not just this year, 5, 10, 20 years, what they're looking at, what they want to do.
Yeah. Cool. I appreciate it, Matt. Tell us a little bit how we can get a hold of you if anyone wants to invest or work with you or just get an interview with you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. My website's scotsmanrealestate.com. Again, my broker's name, Scotsman Real Estate. You can just Google it.
Perfect.
I don't spell it normal, well, I call it unnormal. Actually, the Scotsman is spelled with one T if you're a true Scottish person, but I spell it with two T's because, well, I'm just American. So I spell it differently than the Scots over there. But so it's spelled with two T's, and check it out on Google or whatever. And
Cool.
My phone number's on there too. So
cool. Well, I appreciate you taking the time and spending the time doing this and educating me and everyone else about Cedar Rapids in that area.
yeah. Thanks, Darson.
Thanks, man. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.